Oh, wow. I just finished episode 7. Just finished the season for Tiger King, Murder, Madness, and Mayhem, or whatever, some combination of those 3 words. And I called it. I totally was like, this is gonna have some big cliffhanger type thing for a season 2, just like a Game of Thrones with rednecks thing would be. And it absolutely did. So it starts off that Jeff lets the FBI into Joe's house, or his former house. They tear through everything, they dig up the yard, and in doing so, they find 5 skeletons of cats that had been shot in the head. Basically, they don't feel that the whole hitman thing was really strong enough to convict him. They didn't think they were going to win, so they're like, well, we need as much as we can get our hands on to go after him with. So they figure that killing a wild cat, that's a pretty big charge to go after somebody with, so let's go with that. And Joe does admit that he did euthanize 5 tigers, but said that they were sick, and there's not exactly, you can't exactly take them to a vet, and when they are terminally ill and there's really no other option, that you can either put a dart in them or you can shoot them between the eyes. So he went with the latter. But between the hitman for hire situation, the killing of tigers, the selling of tigers, he's looking at a total of 79 years if he's found guilty. Meanwhile, Jeff has moved to the southern end of Florida near the Texas border to build their new zoo. And he has teamed up with a man named Tim Stark, who is another guy who owned another tiger habitat somewhere else in the series, but we haven't really talked about him because he didn't have anything to do with the story until now. And he just straight up kicks James out of the business venture altogether. He's like, I don't need you anymore. You played your part. You did what I needed you to do, so we're done. Well, James didn't like that, and being the slippery, slimy, Louis Anderson looking kind of dude that he is, was like, well, I mean, I guess I could just throw Jeff under the bus too. So he then reports, because remember, he is the confidential informant to the feds, that they were all sitting in the office whenever it was discussed, the whole hiring a hitman thing to kill Carol, that they were all there, and that it was actually Jeff who suggested Alan be the hitman to kill Carol. Somehow, for whatever reason, at least as of yet, that really didn't go anywhere. While somebody from the district attorney's office said that basically, eventually, we're going to get all these guys. Right now, we'll focus on Joe. We'll worry about these guys a little later on. So during the court case, they decide that they're going to bring all 19 charges up at the exact same time to try to knock it home as much as possible. They figure if they can put a nice little spin on that whole animal cruelty thing when it comes to the euthanasia, that will kind of persuade the jurors to look a little more heavily towards everything else. And they brought in everybody who used to work at the zoo, everybody from like the tiger manager to the guy that like fixed things around the place to John, the former husband, and everybody is literally just throwing him under the bus. They're all kind of turning their back on him and just being like, yeah, he killed tigers, he sold tigers, he tried to get a hitman, they're just making him look as bad as possible. All except for one guy, John Rinke. For those of you keeping score, that's now 2 Johns and 5 J's. John had worked at the park for like 14 years or something like that, and he was one of Joe's best friends in the world. Now, when this whole thing first started, they had talked to him about testifying, but then they never brought it up again. Like the one guy who probably would have been on Joe's side was never brought in to testify, and was the only one that wasn't brought in to testify. Do you ever notice how a lot of these documentaries kind of stack up against the person who they're about? Now, when Alan was brought into the story earlier on, there was a recorded conversation between him and Jeff talking about Joe hiring him to be the hitman. This is where the whole $5,000 only gave me $3,000. I changed my mind and went to whatever. Well, now, whenever he's brought into the stand, his story changes suddenly. On the recording, he said that he was headed towards Florida, but had a change of heart and decided just to go on to South Carolina instead. On the stand, he said that he went to Florida and was all set up to do the deed, but just couldn't go through with it, and that's when he left. Why it was never brought up that that's not at all what he said on the phone call, I don't know. Maybe it'll come out in season 2. Who knows? But you see, Jeff has this nice little way of recording everything. And we're going to discuss that in just a moment. In a move that absolutely nobody nobody was expecting. Since nobody came to bat for him, Joe was like, you know what? Even though my attorney told me not to, I'm taking the stand. So Joe actually took the stand and gave his own side of the story. And the fact that Jeff liked to record everything kind of works for him and against him here. Because while Jeff admittedly likes to record everything so that he can kind of manipulate people into basically giving him the soundbite that he needs to serve whatever purpose he needs it to serve, Joe was actually able to use that information to say, well, you remember when I called you, Jeff, and told you, hey, you know, Alan, he won't wear the uniform and won't do what I tell him to do, and you responded to me by saying, well, he doesn't work for you, he works for me. You remember that whole thing, Jeff? Do you remember that whole thing? Because, well, when I was like, well, I can't work with him like this here, maybe he would just be better off in South Carolina. And you said, you know what? You're right. Why don't you go ahead and dip into the register, get him $3,000 to send him home on? Whoopsie. But like many other things in this case, that went nowhere. So Joe is found guilty and is sentenced to 22 years. Oh my God, there's more sirens. It's really getting old. So in the end, Joe is found guilty on all 19 charges and is sentenced to 22 years in jail. And so closes the case of the Tiger King. Or does it? Oh no, it would be a disappointing season ending if it didn't have some kind of major twist at the end, right? Well, the next thing we see is Dylan, Joe's new husband, walking into a storage shed with the manager of said storage shed about to cut open a, well, storage shed. What was inside, you might ask? Files. Computers, hard drives, on everyone and everything that has transpired over this entire thing. Animal trafficking, animal abuse, Carol, Doc, Tim, Jeff, you, everybody. Joe had files on up to 30 different people that are all doing stuff way worse than anything he ever did. And he decided, you know, I've hated PETA all along, and, well, we've never gotten along with them, but I think they'd really like to have this information. So yes, in classic season finale fashion, the guy who went down in the end will seek his revenge. And on a side note, Tim then found out that Jeff was conning him and basically not paying for his end of anything or actually doing anything, so he ditched out, so Jeff's now broke and trying to finish his park in southern Oklahoma. And Doc, you know, the hippie dude that wants to be called Lord and give you enlightenment through his enlightenment. Well, they raided his place back in December of this last year, and well, they found all kinds of stuff. Basically, they were saying that basically, I think I mentioned it earlier, one of the earlier episodes, I think, where once a cub got a little too old to stop being cute, that Doc would just have it put down. Well, it turns out that that might actually be true. But of course, Doc still denies the allegations. And there you have it, guys. I mean, I'm sorry that this thing went on for so long, but I didn't intend for it to. I just was watching this thing and was like, oh dear God, I've got to talk about it. And now several hours later from when it began, here we are. So what do you think? Have you seen The Tiger King? If you haven't, pause the video right here. Go watch it so you can see that it is every bit as crazy as I've said it is, and then come back so that you can let me know your thoughts down in the comments. Make sure you check us out on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter, and please subscribe. We do these videos every Monday and Friday right now, although hopefully Monday, Wednesday, and Friday is coming back here. Actually, you know what? Today's Monday. I'll be back on Wednesday. How about that? Hopefully I can keep that promise. I mean, I'm under quarantine. I don't see why I wouldn't be able to, but you never know. Also, while you're out here on the internet, jump over to www.geekycool.com. It is, as I like to call it, your one-stop shop for all things nerd. You can see videos like this. You can also see a weekly vlog every Wednesday night. Lots of articles and lists and opinions, games, movies, comics, you name it. We got it. That's www.geekycool.com. Tell them Skallywag Productions sent you. And that's going to wrap it up, guys. We'll see you back here in a couple of days. Thank you so much for watching. Take care of yourselves out there. We'll see you soon.